to the ocean, take me to the sea. Wash away my worries, let my soul be free. Take me to the ocean, take me to the sea. Wash away my worries, let my soul be free.
Hello world, I'm Max. Back in IRL, I go by Curtis. Welcome to another episode of the State Copy Podcast. As always, I'll remind you to review episode 0 and its appended segments for terms, conditions, and disclosures applicable to the entirety of this content. Thank you. Let's get started.
Let's go.
Welcome to the State Copy Podcast, my friend Nasser.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
This is, I have to set the record straight here a bit. Well, when I lean forward, I get right in your face. I didn't predict that.
That's all right.
Each time I do this, I get just a little bit better. And this time, I think my camera is going to work.
Okay.
And last time, I misspoke just a little bit. I said that Hirsch was the first ever guest of my show, and that was just false. You were the first ever guest of my show. But I've kind of upped my production quality a bit, and you were brave enough to do it back when it was just a crazy guy talking, all audio while I was like teaching myself how to do this.
Still a crazy guy.
Well, valid.
But we're going places. You got not users, but you got followers and listeners.
It's a massive following.
Yeah, so that's fantastic.
I don't really intend to ever really work that hard to promote the show.
Yeah,
it's really just a thing I'm doing because I really feel strongly, like passionately, that more people should be doing this, and the people that are like the real pros in this podcasting biz, so to speak, they can only talk to so many people, you know? And so background for Nasser Al-Sulaihim.
Yes.
I have worked with Nasser for years, and we worked first at we were each managers on the other side of a cube wall from each other, managing sort of half of an engineering team at a big Fortune 500, whatever.
You don't name.
I can just say
you don't
it.
name
Like
things.
I just Intel. We worked at Intel, but I don't know really where everybody's confidence or where.
You're probably right. It's probably for the best that we don't. I don't know. But
they're going to look you up on it. Well, a big part of what I'd like to do at the beginning of the show is to hear your story. Because it's, I'll tell you, if you're wise enough, you're always learning from your friends all the time. This guy here has been teaching me so much cool shit for years. No, absolutely. And I think that when we were at Intel, I think we were kind of doing that corporate ladder thing you do, like we each kind of, I think when you work in software engineering or any kind of technical, specifically software engineering, you kind of have to make a decision at some point if you're going to go sort of like this architect, Jedi software
white
engineer.
papers, speaking at conferences. For
Andre Karpathy.
Yes.
Or do you want to be the people manager, program manager?
Yes.
And you and I both kind of selected that second path.
Yeah.
And at some point, because fully out of our control, because we both, I think our team that we were a part of was really successful, and we were kind of a skunkworks project that grew into a thing. But like I think so many people experience at large companies, we experienced that thing where we kind of do our jobs really right, and we take it really seriously, and we try and get our teams passionate about what they're working on, and then the company loses faith in whatever it is we're working on.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, because you spend so much time. If you're doing a good job or trying to do a good job as a manager, you're connecting with the people that you're managing.
Yeah.
And I've said this many times before, but I played team sports a lot as a kid and growing up, and I draw so many parallels and analogies with team sports and management, or even family.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm even in a management setting, I sometimes think of myself as the patriarch or matriarch, and they're my family, they're my children. Maybe, in 2023, that's all going to get me canceled, but
probably. But no,
yeah.
I think it's
It's a very
healthy approach.
I think it served me well because they're people that I end up caring about deeply.
Yeah.
And
I can relate to that.
And I treat them, differently, uniquely, because they are unique human beings. And that intersects a lot with HR has policies that are meant to work for everybody. It's sort of a broad strokes application of policy across people that are differently motivated, differently engaged with their work and with the other people that they work with. Some are competitive, some are not. Some don't want. Where we came from, that's a very competitive place.
Yeah.
And it's legendary how much they, throughout the year they want you to work collaboratively with your peers, but then come review time, they want you to try to differentiate yourself in a very competitive, almost slanderous type of way. So it was a very weird thing, and I'm sure it works. I'm sure some consultancy did that whole workup with them and said this is
the
right
Bobs
way.
got together.
The Bobs, yeah.
And they decided it was what was best for all of us.
Yeah. But in terms of management, I think we have similar outlook on it. Is that they're people first, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and that was what I think was frustrating to both of us, because I think we both did it in a personal way where it is like family a lot. And then, you're, when kind of the rug gets pulled out from under your team because of reasons financial or whatever, or somebody in a higher place decides to make just a change on a spreadsheet.
I understand that too. I mean, that's corporate America.
You got to do it.
Capitalism.
Absolutely.
You have to know when you
Yes.
take a job that's always a possibility.
Very valid to say. But I think that we experienced that, and I mean, I think you went, and this is where I wanted to kind of dive into your story, because I think it's so cool. I found it really inspiring, the idea of sort of stepping out of that whole system and doing the startup route. I mean, Y Combinator, this guy, the whole thing. And at some point I join you in that, and we'll get to that part of the story later. Yeah. But I think that hearing just kind of how you worked through that, the decision to go do it, because I mean, you kind of, we have families, we have people counting on us for that paycheck and the health benefits and all of that stuff. And I think we all go through that part in life where you're trying to, you want to go take a chance, but you got so many people counting on you. And so I'd love to just go through that, and then Y Combinator, getting a working version, Rev 1 that you could go sell to hospitals and stuff. Tell us the story.
where to start? But I was at Intel for about 12 years. Yeah. Through many recessionary cycles, through the 2008 crash. In fact, at Intel, our biggest rounds of layoffs happened around 2005, 2006, where at a time when the economy was kind of still humming. Real estate was exploding. But I think to some people who were, forecasting, the writing was on the wall, and they made some really deep cuts back then. So I'd been through a few cycles. I mean, I graduated college right after the .com bust in computer systems engineering, right? So
Right.
my biggest prospects was like I could go sell computers at Best Buy, and that's the closest I can get to working in the field, because everyone I knew was just getting laid off or
timing.
terrible
Bad
timing.
Well, it ends up being great timing. Like
Yeah.
I loved the time that we entered the field. But
Yeah.
it's just immediately after college. Yeah, that was rocky.
that was rough. But so I was there 12 years, and I was like you say, I was climbing the ladder. Started as an engineer and went to became a senior engineer, team lead. Owned my own projects and ran my own working groups with customers and things like that. So collecting feedback and prioritizing the work, all that stuff. Even before there was Agile was just kind of starting, and Scrum. So climbed the ladder, eventually got to a group where I was, managing a team of UI UX developers.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, why I picked the management route versus the I think I'm an engineer in the sense that it doesn't matter what it doesn't have to be computers, it can be anything, and my brain wants to sort of take it apart and put it back together,
right,
and understand how it works, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't
Can
necessarily
fully relate.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean I wrote the best code. I would sit in these, code review.
I can fully relate.
Yes, where people are arguing about this for loop and that for loop, and all I wanted to do was just, I totally
I think
understand.
you're a bit more zoomed out.
I'm zoomed out. I mean, I want to solve the problem.
Right.
And I want to solve it in a way that, gets us to the next problem.
Yeah.
And really, I want to once we've solved it or figured out, maybe a blueprint for how to solve it, I want to hand it off to people who really know how to build things. I see the value in arguing over that stuff. It just wasn't what I wanted to argue about. Right?
To me, it always seemed like a level of specialization.
Yeah.
That where I've always working with me for years. As an engineer, I'm a jack of all trades guy. I'm the guy who can put together this podcast studio. And I like knowing a little bit about everything and then putting it together. Yeah.
Same here. I think there's maybe some corollary or some overlap with me as a student. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't a great test taker, but I could do a lot of things. I
think jack of all trades becomes super powerful at some point.
Yeah.
Right.
So the construct of school was not appealing to me. It was a means to an end.
Yes. Keep going. I got to turn this down.
No worries. So
how unprofessional.
So anyway, that's why I feel like I went the management route, because I felt like I could connect with people. I was good at that. Yeah. I'm naturally an introvert, but that throws people when I say that.
Yeah, I was gonna say
But they don't.
I have my own opinion on your intra or extroversion.
Right.
We can get into
that. Usually throws people, and I say, I'm not like dysfunctional with people. I'm not awkward. Mm-hmm. I know how to turn it on and talk. Doesn't mean I'm fake either. It's genuine. But the difference is, and I'll tell you after thinking about this so much, the difference is,
I know what you're gonna say. Go.
It drains me.
Yeah.
It doesn't energize me.
Right.
What energizes me is quiet and just sort of being alone sometimes.
I didn't know you were going to say that. I like your answer better than I was going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I can go to parties and work the room, and you've seen me in those situations.
Very extroverted, at least to the outside observer.
Yeah.
Yeah, very extroverted.
Right.
You've seen me be that.
Yeah.
But I'm very simpatico.
You're energized by that.
No. I am energized like you by quiet contemplation.
Yes.
And, you know, like that's my jam.
Right.
But I can function. I can turn that on. It's
Right.
like because jack of all trades, just being able to. That's also something that is kind of rare in the engineering field, is being able to like talk and relate to people, be empathetic, be able to read a room, read a person, and if they're struggling emotionally.
It's more rare than people, you know, once I got into the role of hiring, I saw how much more rare it is, or it was than I thought.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you know, because everyone I worked with, you know, people like you were like, you know, we could rap and do things, and like we could be friends, right?
Right.
And communicate formally, informally, you know, across the whole spectrum. But yeah, once you're trying to find engineers that fit and trying to manage the culture,
it's like two different brains. It's like two different mindsets. That one that can be a very successful coder.
Yes.
That's extremely analytical. The ones that are, you know, just Jedis at debugging problems and setting up all of these alerts and all of these all of the stuff you need to do to be a successful engineer.
Right.
It seems like it creates I don't know, like a mindset that is kind of So I always I didn't realize that was a rare quality, and then until same thing, and you know,
right. But you need all those archetypes in a team.
Absolutely.
You just need to figure out how to, you know, the people who aren't great at communicating necessarily, but they're excellent at other things. You just playing to their strengths and trying to work around weaknesses, or make the Tetris pieces fit, you know. So anyway, that was very circuitous, but I love circuitous.
Please.
It's 2013.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of going to work and coming home every day. Like there was nothing exhilarating. You know, throughout my college, even, and again, this was during the .com era. Yeah, there were a lot of people talking about startups and people leaving school to go work at a startup or go work at big companies who are paying $60,000 a year to to someone who hasn't graduated yet.
And in those .com times,
yes.
yeah, that was a big
deal.
That was more than I thought I would ever make when I was
absolutely,
so totally.
Where was I? Yes,
2013. And you're doing a job.
I'm doing a job, but back in the .com, I was always sort of still entrepreneurial, right? I was thinking like,
that was like the grail, man.
That was it.
That was like the coolest.
Everybody
shit.
was like, this is Web 2.0 at its peak. Like,
oh yeah,
you know, like we build a website that does this.
Let's make an app.
Let's make an app.
Right.
Or no, this is
you're right. This is pre-apps.
This was web. It wasn't even web apps, right? It was like sites, websites.
Yeah. Learn some HTML and some CSS and all of these things. Yeah.
And you built something that automated something, right? Mm-hmm. And you just made it easier for people to get information, submit information, run things, do things.
Yeah.
So I had that spirit, but it's a lot more than, and I come to learn this even more, so reinforce this later in life, that it's so much more than just the idea. Right?
Yeah.
You need way more than just the idea and even the energy. You need other people.
There's so much to it.
There's so much
to it. Like, it is wild. And it's so much that I don't need like my exposure to startup land was after you already like had so much established. And that's why like that story is so cool. Like
So anyway, why I say that is because I was always open to something. Right. If anyone had approached me with something, I think that would have been an easier route, and it was an easier route than me. Even though I had ideas, I claim to have invented Snapchat way before there was a Snapchat. I didn't call it Snapchat. It was like a digital invisible ink, you know, when we were kids.
The same idea. I think we talked about this.
Yeah. So
Okay.
But it was an idea. But I needed to round up people, and I'm an introvert, so like I have friends, but that's a lot of.
You got to round up people and get money too.
Yes,
right.
Like
that is a wild social game.
So it was a lot easier for me just to say, hey, I'm your tech guy. If you have an idea, and maybe you're not technical, you can approach me. So that's what happened. Maybe I put it out there into the universe, if you believe in that. But
totally.
Yeah. All I remember is being approached by. Are we naming people? I don't know.
Yeah. Use a first name.
Asar, who was my manager at the time.
Yeah.
His brother.
Yeah.
Was one of the idea people with Adil, who ended up being the CEO, founder and CEO. So they had this idea and they needed someone to build it, and they were physicians, or one of them was a practicing physician, Omar. Adil, he graduated med school, but he's more entrepreneurial. He's a serial entrepreneur. He had one company prior to that. He worked in VC, so he was, I don't think, ever interested in
He was always
being
going
a
to
doctor.
Silicon Valley or that type of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I, got to talking. We met at a Starbucks, and they told me what they were working on and showed me some paperwork. And I was like, sure,
Yeah.
And so we got to work. It was me and Dwayne on that same day that we, Dwayne, who's now the CEO of another company.
Yeah.
Good for him. So, yeah, and then we were just kind of a lot of talking in the early days, right? It's like before I, put pen to paper, so to speak, writing code. Where do we start? What is this?
How does one do this thing?
How does one do this thing, right? So I also pulled in Anthony. I would say, he's an excellent engineer, now an architect. He's
blow your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's also a good manager. He's also a very good manager. So
yeah, I agree.
So he, I was like, okay, I need someone to bounce ideas off of, and to like whiteboard this out with, and build it with, right? So we hired Anthony on a contract basis over sort of November of 2013. We said, so I signed October 2013, hired him to
engineering team of one,
and then
a part-time
Anthony,
contractor. Yeah.
In November, and said, by the end of Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, we need to have something we can start showing hospitals and customers. And that's kind of how it started. Then we just sort of iterated on that for a while. I was doing a lot of deployments. And I was going.
I think your network they're so fortunate that they they got a lot more than an engineer to help build something, and then they got everything else with it. Go on. I interrupt. I think that they were very Adil and was just really fortunate that he reached out to you. And it was so, I remember thinking towards the end of it, I'm looking around with all these people that we'd worked with for years,
right?
that were a part of it. It was so cool.
That is true. I didn't ever think of it because, he could have, and maybe this was just serendipity. He didn't know better because he didn't approach me directly. He was asking Omar, who do you know? And he said, oh, my brother works at Intel. Let's see who he knows. And me and Asar were already friends by then. But yes, he could have gone and found, a very young engineer who hadn't built out a network yet.
Yeah.
Right? Who didn't know who to call to come and do this with. So I think that was, just fortunate for everybody that, someone that was already probably, by then 14 years into their career and had met hundreds of people. And
It's a great lesson for startups. You want that person with the 14 years and an established network, and
especially as an early, I think it's as an early employee, because once you start bringing in either revenue or raising money, you need to be able to hire quickly. And if they already have a network of people who, you got a UI guy, you got a data guy, you got a DevOps, this and that, you just start pulling from the network. They're a phone call away. They're just a phone call away. You know, this is a lot easier than putting something out on a job site. So we just started iterating, and you know what? There's this phenomenon. I'm sure there's a name for it. I don't know what that name is, but sort of the busier you are, the more productive you are. A lot was happening at this time. I was going through a divorce. I had 2 toddlers.
I want to talk about that later too.
Sure. I had 2 toddlers at the time. I was working a full-time job, and I was working on this startup. I felt like I was spinning all the plates and firing on all cylinders far more than today, when I'm sort of pseudo-retired. Thankfully, I mean, it's fortunate, right? It worked out well, but I get to drive kids to school and pick them up, and we have that. That's great.
Right.
But I just don't feel as productive as I once was. So you look back and you're like,
I think it's like riding a bike, dude.
It's what?
It's riding a bike. Like I think that.
If I had that's what I'm saying. It's not over for me.
Right, well, yeah.
But if I had a full plate.
Well, sometimes I thought that might be where you're going.
No. I'm saying if you loaded up my plate right now,
you would just feel.
I could work. If you gave me one thing to do right now, I'd probably struggle with that. But if you gave me 6.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
I'd be
where
like, okay, now my brain kicks in. I start slotting things.
Said. I took that on the wrong path,
I start slotting things into where they fit
and
finding time for them, and I can get all 6 done. But if you give me that one, it'll kind of just linger, and like I'm not.
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. There's a name for this, I'm sure. There's kind of a name for everything, but I don't know what that is. So a lot was going on at the time.
Yeah.
Including another sort of Intel layoff round. Right. This one was interesting. This one was almost completely arbitrary in the way that where they drew the line. Right.
And there was 2 phases, because I feel like the first one impacted you, the second one impacted me, and it was because of that really weird. Yeah. They came up with some weird metric for the review cycle.
The metric is every year during review time, you get your base salary raise. Yeah. You get some allotment of RSUs. Right. And there's like tiers. So 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
I think 1 being the highest or 5 being the highest. I don't know. I don't remember. But
it's never enough, right? And as a manager, you're like, you got to smear this across.
Yeah, you do. But this is where, at the time, my manager, unintentionally, I believe, I'd like to hope at least, screwed me, because, they only have so many knobs. They have those 3 knobs. In fact, there's the salary bump, the bonus bump, and the stock. Right. Yeah. So he wanted to be able to give me a higher bonus. Yeah. So he kind of put me at a lower stock tier.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then HR decided that's where we're going to draw the line. If you got a lower stock tier, it must mean that you're a poor performer.
No, that was totally nobody knew that.
Nobody knew that.
It was just like suddenly they knew they had to do cuts, and they arbitrarily chose that one.
That's the one. Yeah. So naturally, I fall into this bucket of people. Right. So I get this severance letter, and he
and redeployment. Like there was like this whole period of time, right?
There's 3 months, 90 days, which is generous. I mean, really,
it is.
3 months.
You were right to say that is very much just part of, and there's the economic cycle is totally a part of that.
Yes.
And that's the thing that people don't like until you start diving into all the macro.
It's not personal. I mean, maybe if you have a crappy manager or someone who's out to get you that's where it can get personal. But
no, but
in
when
general,
an Intel says we're laying off 10,000 employees,
and you just happen to be one of them.
Yeah.
So what happened was they actually petitioned for me to stay.
Yeah.
And they made a case. They're like, hey, we were just doing this to up his bonus target, so to make it equitable. And Intel called me back and they said, sorry, we'll restore all your benefits. We'll restore everything back to where it was. Yeah. And they sent me a letter also just documenting that, like, saying that
we screwed up.
It was a mistake. Yeah. Please come back. And that, again,
at the time, kind of rubbed you the wrong way.
That rubbed me the wrong way, as well.
The arbitrary nature of it did, as I was hearing the story, and it was happening to me right at that time for the other metric that they chose, because they had to really downside right then. It just for me it was like it didn't feel like it offered all of the security that I had always accepted and sacrificed, like this grand adventure you did in Startup Land for.
I think timing had a huge role to play here. The timing at that point, this was in 2016, 16, I want to say. Yeah. Up until then, I'd been working my 40 hours at Intel. And then in the evenings, after putting the kids to sleep, I'm on the phone with Anthony doing a deployment to some.
I remember those days. I remember you
it's dark. I'm in a kitchen because it's dark, and the only light is my laptop because I don't want to wake anybody up. It was a weird time.
That was badass. I mean, what
was badass was just that I felt so in control of my life, even though my life was out of control by any external measure, right?
Right. I wanted to go back and talk about the divorce thing. We'll do that at the end.
We'll get there. But it was badass because
I watched you go through that, and I felt like dude is just tap dancing with style through some the flames.
I held it together,
walking over the burning coals, and you're like doing a dance as you do it.
I mean, I held it together, especially when the kids were around.
Yeah,
because I think you have to do that. But there were some dark times in there. But the timing of this severance thing is really what made this happen. Yeah. They were like, come back, and work, and I was thinking to myself, things are starting to take off a little bit here. Like, we're getting some traction. We have some customers on the.
There's a job here. Yeah, there is a thing happening.
There's a thing happening, and really the only thing missing is more of a time dedication, more of a time investment. To this thing. Yeah. From everyone involved. Yeah. So I was like, this is
it's
a sign. If you believe in signs, this is a sign. Or just the timing is perfect. Yeah. I'm gonna take advantage of this. So I said, thanks, but no thanks. I'll take the severance check. Yeah. And that was like benefits for 18 months, which, a startup's not going to give you benefits, not at that stage especially. Yeah. Full benefits for 18 months. I think because I'd been there 12 years, it was like almost a year's worth of salary or something. So, So, before taxes, then Uncle Sam takes his share, but
still, that's a hell of a running start. Adventure. Yeah.
And it didn't need to burden the startup either for me to come and do that full time. So that was all good, and then it was sort of off to the races, just living sort of a startup life.
Which is so cool. I want to hear some of those stories.
Normally people think of startups as like the thing that 20-something year olds are doing, and they're just like working all hours. And I was working lots of hours at random times. Yeah. But I still had a mortgage, and I had a family, and I had all these things going on at the same time. So it wasn't like what you're picturing from like Silicon Valley or something like that. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't trade that for anything, because up to that point now, 15, 16 year career really taught me a lot of things. Taught me how to look at something and be able to dismiss it, because I know it's not you get that gut feel that you don't have when you're fresh.
Yeah.
And everything seems like a good idea, and you feel like you can do all the ideas, right?
Right.
It sort of had more balance, because I was like, I don't have the time or energy to do all of it.
And there's a cool. You've got a cool about you when there's fires everywhere, where you're like, well, that's a fire that...
Right.
That fire is not an issue till next week.
Right. That's next week's fire.
Yeah.
This one's the one we need to deal with today. Yeah. So there's that for sure. Then, from 2016, from between 2016 and 2017, it was just me working on Anthony, trying to get him to come on board full time. And in 2017, he finally did. So then we had the deal full time, Anthony, me full time, Anthony full time. I think right around 2016 when I left Intel, Jacob also was in the picture, and he came on full time. So then it was like a lot of, we had a good collection of
my first day, I remember thinking,
people.
This is a company. There's, there's a cast and crew of engineering, front end, business development, the whole thing was,
there was also a pivot right around then too, 2016. I don't know if you want to go into that really, but like most startups, you go down a path, you have some idea and you build some prototype or an MVP. You learn a lot from that experience, and you find customers, and you realize that's not solving the problem that you thought was really a problem. And so you pivot. Sometimes they're drastic pivots, and sometimes they're sort of tangential. But right around then we pivoted, and then things just started to click better. And it was, except for a deal, none of us really had any healthcare experience. And it's a different animal. I imagine government is similar. I imagine some other industries are similar, where it's pretty restrictive in what you can do. HIPAA was a thing that I'd only heard of.
I ended up our compliance officer,
right?
So that's, I'm familiar with these
absolutely
things.
What a startup is like someone like Curtis gets to be the compliance officer. Because someone like Nasser didn't want to do it anymore,
right?
Because
risk assessments.
Yeah,
oh man,
that
give me nightmares just constantly.
Right. So
we can talk about that.
So
medical software is ridiculously, just from a regulatory perspective, it is so overcomplicated, and there's so much burden put on software developers, software shops, providers to just do so much bullshit.
And you know what made us made that pivot successful was just understanding that very thing, and that even as engineers trying to build something for that industry, the users are tired of having software solutions shoved down their throat. They, for the most part, just want to practice medicine, and they want the tools they're using to just work. Right. And our take at that point was, after 3 years of sort of trying to have a really really user-centric sort of or they interacting with the software a lot. We realized that only so many people in medicine have an appetite for that. Most just want things to sort of just work. They're trying to hit metrics, operational metrics that aren't necessarily going to be solved by them using some tool. And they don't want to learn another tool, and they already have a bunch.
Well, and isn't there this? There's also this huge hurdle of just bringing new tech.
There's that too, right? So our solution was, they don't even need to know that it's there. What if we built it in such a way that there's no app, not on the user side and not on the medical staff or team side. We just plug into plumbing that's already there.
Real quick, it would probably be helpful to just describe what the app did.
Yeah. Well, today this use case is ubiquitous. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you book an appointment at a nail salon, or you book an appointment, for any kind of procedure, a haircut, and you're going to get text messages, and they're all trying to target a lot of the same metrics, which is for people to arrive on time and prepared for whatever that thing is, right?
Right.
In the area that we were targeting mainly, because it was a high volume, high prep procedure, is gastroenterology and colonoscopy specifically. I don't know if you've had a colonoscopy, I think.
Long time ago.
Yeah, I'm due. But the prep for a colonoscopy is that you drink this solution for 24-hour period, and you empty your bowels nonstop.
Right.
So you gotta
if you mess that up, you can't do it.
If you mess that up, it's not like they told someone else to be ready for that same appointment just in case patient A. That's kind of a miserable existence for that 24 hours. So it's not like flying standby, to just show up. So that's a foregone slot for both the staff and you as a patient needing the service.
Really
right?
expensive cancellation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So really, I mean, all the hospitals had existing protocols. Normally, they'd be on paper. This Xeroxed sheet that's been Xeroxed 10,000 times. It was blurry at this point because you're Xeroxing copies of copies.
Yeah. And this is 2016.
This is 2016. Yeah. So we just took those same protocols and digitized them, and then time delayed them, time released them, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Today you need to know that you need to go pick up your prescription, but you don't need to know how much to drink or when to drink, because that's a problem for 4 days from now when it's the day before your appointment, right? So it's kind of not inundating patients. They could look ahead and see what they needed to do. That was always there, and that helped from an anxiety perspective, knowing what to expect. But it would just send you content when it was the right time to get it. And it had all this stuff built in. If you rescheduled, it would retime all those reminders, and if you canceled, it would leave you alone. So there was an email and SMS component, so no apps. No native apps, right?
Yeah.
So nothing that a patient had to install. That was a big hurdle.
It's like a really low lift.
Low barrier, right?
Yeah. For the hospital operations.
Hospital operations didn't need to say, hey, send this program to so-and-so. It was all pre-curated. So as soon as a patient was scheduled for something, for a procedure, they would automatically be enrolled. So no one had to do anything different than what they were already doing.
Well, it worked. It was a success story.
It worked great. And the medical staff got many fewer phone calls, questions.
Yeah.
And then they would also, because it's digital, we could update the content anytime, right? They could say, hey, we're getting a lot of questions about purple Gatorade. Can I drink purple Gatorade? It says I can drink clear liquids. I can't drink red Gatorade. How about purple Gatorade, right? So they could call us and say, we need to update the content to say purple Gatorade is okay or not okay, whatever. And we could do that. And then from then on, all these thousands of patients that are due for next week's colonoscopies and so on would just get that updated content. So it's very low lift for the medical staff.
Right.
Today, at the time, there was not a lot of competition for this. There were less than a handful, less than you can count on one hand. Today, they're everywhere. It's a very commoditized business, and for the most part, they charge per message sort of thing. Yeah. Which is, I'm grateful that we got ahead of that commoditization, because that would have been a much harder, a much harder business model, I think, for us. Right. Ours was very, concierge. Our hospital operations team was great. They really built a relationship with the medical team, But it just that's a hard thing to scale and support if you're charging 5 cents a message. Then really you're trying to promote more messages so that you can make more of that hit your profit margins.
But
and that's annoying to patients.
Now that we have an understanding of sort of like high level what the app did, take me back, because the magic thing for me as being like I had 15 years, 14, whatever. Like you and I are about the exact same age almost, and we started. We had different paths, but we ended up at like the same place doing very similar things at a certain point in our career. And when you were going through Y Combinator, that was just like a thing that. It sounded so sexy to me. I mean, it was like, that's the dream for software engineering. I mean, that is like Silicon Valley. You're a Silicon Valley startup. You're going through, you're meeting, potentially you sat in a room with like a Sam Altman and
I did.
What I mean? You did. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
That part.
We applied to Y Combinator. Well, even before Y Combinator, we had applied to other ones, Techstars. And there was a couple of pitch competitions that we won, which were great. That was what paid for our cloud services for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So we had 3 years worth of cloud services we didn't need to pay for. And this was a SaaS cloud offering, right? So that was huge.
That was really huge, because that was that allowed us to try things. I remember like we could just spin up a service, spin up a thing, whereas if you're very tightly constrained.
That also made us gluttonous and lazy, because we'd spin that up to try it, and then we'd neglect to turn it off or
and then you don't know later, can I turn that off? But that forced us to
it's just one of those things.
It's growing pains. But
so we applied to a few of them, and the first time we applied to Y Combinator, actually we did not get in. I remember.
What was the application process like back then? Was it like, did you submit a pitch deck and record a video or something? Or do you go there in person to do the application?
All of the above at different stages. So I think they have 2 batches a year. Yeah. One is a winter batch and one is a summer batch. And they, you first fill out an application online.
Yeah.
Answer a bunch of questions. And I remember a lot of the questions. Some of the questions are really targeted at seeing how much of a maverick you are, which I respect. So you had to give examples of where you sort of bucked the system. Times in your life where you worked around something or bucked the system,
faked it,
or something. Or came up with some innovative solution to get around something that was like limiting you, right? So that was interesting, and it was really pro just being a maverick, being right. So it was a lot of those questions, and Adil had to do one, I had to do one, and Jacob had to do one.
Right. And they want 3 founders, right? Traditionally, or 2, at least 2, or there's some sort of model.
There's a I don't know if there's a preference. I think they've had some sole founders, and they've been successful. But they talk about how it's kind of lonely as a single founder.
Yeah.
Not that you think every idea of yours is a great idea, but who do you have to bounce that off, or to sanity check you, or to play devil's advocate? That's sort of on the same level of commitment and ownership and accountability for the company as you are, right? Yeah. So I get that, but that's not to say that it's like totally exclusive of single founders. But I think they say something like the sweet spot is, I don't know if it's 2 or 3. I don't remember. So we all filled that out. Then I think they only accept like 2% of those applications. So they have, I don't know. The batches keep getting bigger, so I don't know what the numbers are now. But at the time, I think they'd have like 4,000 applications, and they'd accept like 400 or 400 and 800.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to go to the next stage, which is actually you submit the video, I think, in that application. So you record a video of yourselves doing a pitch, basically.
Yeah.
Like it's very short. It's like a minute, I think.
Oh, okay.
They cap it at a minute, and you send that in, and then they send you an email or something to let you know whether you made that first cut. If you've made the first cut, you go in person.
Was your pivot that you mentioned before or after
Before
acceptance?
that.
Okay.
Before that, yeah.
Okay. So you, when you were doing the video and everything, you knew you were pitching patient navigation.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we went to Mountain View, and we pitched in person. It's a 10-minute pitch. You don't get any more than that. And they're pretty, famous or infamous for cutting you off. They're very they want to make the most of the time. They only have 10 minutes to gauge you, basically. So
right.
they might ask you a question.
They put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah, and if you're being too verbose or whatever, they'll cut you off, and even that can be like, if you don't know it's coming, like, did I mess up? Are we automatically excluded?
Did you guys get cut off?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
Even if you get in, you're likely to get cut off, unless you're just so dynamic and so informative in that 10 minutes.
Well, you ran all the way up to the 10 minutes, and you guys experienced that.
No, they don't cut you off before the 10 minutes. They give you the full 10 minutes.
Right.
But in between,
I'm saying, like, right at the 10, did you guys go over time and have to go?
No.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
If they give you more time,
right up.
they're constantly looking at the door, looking at the clock, and then right around then, okay, well, thanks, and then you go outside and you wait.
Yeah.
They come and ask you. So we didn't make make it in that first time because I think we didn't have enough traction, maybe, which is strange because a lot of the companies that they expect don't even have a product. There's just an idea, and they're going to use that time to build the MVP, right? The time in the program. But because we had a product, but not a lot of traction,
right?
Not a lot of revenue for the time that we'd been operating, it was I guess not impressive enough, or
sure,
totally.
That's probably just a metric they've developed for companies that are in these different stages, and it's probably just
right. I mean,
unless you're making this target because you already have your MVP, like you said.
You could come and in fact, one of the members of our batch did this. That you could come and your idea could be that you're going to download someone's consciousness, right, and digitize it and somehow maintain it,
right,
until we have the technology to
state copy.
So that was there, and you had to sign this agreement that you had to put a deposit down, something like that. And I remember actually hearing that Sam Altman had put a deposit down on this for this thing. I don't know where that's gone or what's going on, but it was interesting because I mean, you're dead. The deposit, if you have the money, it's fine. It's like a asymmetric sort of gamble. Like if it works out, great, it was worth the money. If it didn't, I'm already dead, so who cares? What I mean? But there's no product there. It was just an idea.
Yeah.
Right. But that person got accepted. So
really.
Yeah.
So that was actually. Now I thought you were just pulling that one out, but no, that was somebody. Somebody actually was saying they were going to.
Yes.
Capture.
I wish I could remember the name of.
I would have loved to go back and talk to that person.
I mean, we can go back. We can go back each batch and see which companies they were, and I think I could probably spot it if I saw the name of it. Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, so we didn't make it the first time, but right around that time, so we were applying for the summer of 2017 batch.
Yeah.
And we didn't get in. But during that time, after we didn't get in, we signed a couple of big clients, big customers.
Yeah.
I think like Brigham and Women's and a lot of the marquee hospitals in the Boston area that everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
So by the time it was time to apply for winter of 2018, which starts in January, goes to March, we had better books, better looking books,
that looked really good too, because you had that history with them,
right?
And you could say, you know, we kicked ass in this
in a matter of 6 months or whatever it is. We went from here to here. So so that was good. I remember to film that video, Adil and Jacob were living in New York at the time, and I flew to New York to record this video. And my idea was to, you know, because you don't have a lot of time, you have a minute.
Yeah.
And you could waste
dazzle in a minute.
You could waste 30 seconds talking about your role in, like, who you are. Like, oh, it's, you know, CTO, you know, CEO, CFO. You can just say that, but even to cut out that level of coordination or whatever, I had this idea because he had a whiteboard behind. I was like, we'll draw hats. I have the spinny propeller hat. That means, like, I'm the tech guy, and then I don't remember what they had, but it was like some representative hat, you know, and
very creative.
Well, also quite literally, this is the hat that you wear in the company, right? So we did that. We sent it in and filled the application, all the same stuff, and then we went in for the interview, and it was Kat Manialik, Dalton Caldwell, and Paul Buchheit. Paul Buchheit is I guess famously known for, he's a prolific investor as well, but also famously known for something to do with Gmail. He used to work at Google and was the you know, Google Gmail was a brainchild of his or something like that.
Oh, wow.
I don't know that for sure, but I think that's what it was. I'm going off of memory. So I think he was the most intimidating one of them. Yeah, they play roles, right?
Sure.
There's good cop, bad cop, and third cop. I don't know what the third cop does, but he's definitely the bad cop. And then they came out and there's one more. God, I forget his name. He was sort of like a visiting partner, YC partner. Like he was in the biotech. Super nice guy, Diego, yeah. So he was the one after our session. He kept coming out when they were deliberating. Yeah. He kept coming out and asking us questions. You know, like, so we're like, okay, you know, maybe it's close and they just need this information. So let's furnish it. And I just remember we were like at the airport, getting ready to fly back to where we came from, and
got
the call.
Oh shit!
Yeah. So that was exciting, and then
that had to be so exciting. Yeah, because that's runway. That's when everything. That's when I think you reached out to me. It was right around that time.
Yeah.
It was right after Y Combinator, and you guys had all of the cloud.
Was Kyle there when you joined?
Oh yeah, he interviewed me.
Oh, he interviewed you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we had
Gabe and Kyle interviewed
Gabe and
me.
Kyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So the engineering team was really just Anthony, Gabe, and Kyle, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That sounds about right. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you guys had done event. This is the part that's so cool about startup. If you've only come up in the very sort of corporate, big software is what I always call it. Big software. It's just great big companies with massive budgets, big projects, teams of 20 or 30 engineers potentially working on a thing. Right. It's a really restrictive environment in some ways. I mean, there's pluses and minuses. There's if potentially the economy's going south and they need to downsize their force, there might be 18 months of medical care. Right. Like there's huge perks of working for big software.
Yes.
But in little software, in this scrappy startup land, there's so much that's so fun about it. It's not just the environment, and So let me. Is there more you want to say on that before I go to my joining? Okay.
No. I do want. As you mentioned that, two things jumped out. So one is it wasn't even big software. It was software in big hardware, which was.
Oh, you're right.
Which is actually even more difficult.
Yes, that's
because
absolutely true.
And I don't want to diss the company, but there's a lot more respect for its bread and butter, which is hardware, than
rightfully. You know, you could probably say,
yeah. But
they had aspirations though to be big software.
Time and again, But then they'd get the CEO who was big on just streamlining manufacturing.
We do chips.
That's what we do. Software. Yeah. So I get it. Everything.
I love that company.
Yeah.
I got more in my career out of I worked at Intel for 7 years.
One thing I can say about my time at Intel, at least, is that I felt like, because I've worked at a big company since then.
Yeah.
I felt like everyone I interacted with was smart.
Yeah.
And generally good at their job, even if we didn't click, or maybe if we didn't agree on something or whatever. I felt like they knew and had reason to be have conviction for what they were talking about. And it wasn't just we're pushing paper, we're checking boxes.
It was big software, but it was big software with passion.
Yes.
And you're working with
so I have a lot of respect
like,
for. I still have a lot of friends at Intel. Same. I see them all the time, and I have a lot of respect for everybody at that company. So
and the company in general.
Yeah,
like I would love to see it do well.
Yes.
Same. I got so much professionally, learned so much. I mean, that's where I became a manager, a software engineering manager, and all that. And that I'll always be really grateful for what I got from that experience. I mean, it's more so than any job I've ever had. And the place I worked at before Intel was not that. Like I worked for a risk analytics software company where there's a lot of people that didn't want to learn Scrum, didn't want to learn Agile. Right. They were sort of lifers that had been maintaining a thing in, they were 20 or 30 year software vets, a lot of them, and they were just kind of like, it was just very different. Mm-hmm. And so that was a thing Intel really got well. But then Startup Land. Startup Land this was the first time I ever walked into a room. Yeah. And when I started, so the backstory, when like timing was perfect for you needed somebody who had DevOps. Yeah. And at the time I was in an IC role at Intel working on with their cable modem team, and you get a sense for, like, you can read the patterns of the economic currents and the internal, like, I'm on a team that's probably gonna at minimum change radically in a way where I might be forced to go look for a position in a new group or whatever. And when you get that vibe, and that's developed with time and experience doing it, then you just, like, I sensed that coming right when I think we went, my family and your family went to, like, 4th of July or something like that. Oh, yeah. I think or it was New Year's, or I can't remember what it was. I think it was 4th of July. 4th of July. Yeah. We were out, and you gave me so what would it take, man, to, I'm
really fuzzy on those details because there've been so many, not to minimize this experience, but
you did that with a lot of people.
Yeah. And so I'm interested to recall this with you, because it's
you
pivotal.
Caught me, I had just gone to Israel for the second time, and it was not a fun trip. The first trip was really fun. Yeah. The second trip I had to go, and I at the time was really poor. I really did not deal well with travel sleep. Yeah. And for about 6 days I was just awake straight. Yeah. Which I've never experienced that. One other time I've experienced that since. So it was like, physically it was really rough on me. And then it was right. And actually I was in a group where I think I want to work this carefully because I really loved everybody I worked with in that group, but there was someone who had intentionally made it difficult to make necessary progress. They kind of I'm pretty confident that they made it intentionally difficult to fix problems because they wanted to sort of wrestle control back of a certain part of the program, and it worked. And when I was there, I was told, okay, you're now going to start reporting to this person. Yeah, who had directly stood in my way of doing all kinds of really important like DevOps changes, because those are a lot of times very sweeping and they impact a whole engineering team. So if you want to do something radical to fix things and somebody gets in your way and goes, oh, that's going to break, that's going to break, that's going to break this, that, and then just nothing gets done for long enough, and then suddenly that person is going to be my manager. So I'm flying home on an airplane, and for whatever reason, probably because I was sweating bullets because I'd been awake for 6 days straight, when I got to the airport in Tel Aviv, they put me on okay, you're going to go over there and we're going to take everything out of your bags. We're going to inspect it for 2 hours.
Is that part because of me? Are you going to tell that
nothing
part?
To do
Are
with
you
you?
Tell that part of the story though?
What's that?
Where they asked you who's
this? Yes, right. Because your name is, you have a hyphenated last name. You're from, you grew up in a Muslim country. Yeah. And they asked me, they saw that I had been to Bali for your honeymoon.
My wedding,
I didn't go to your honeymoon. I went to your wedding. Yeah, but I had gone to Bali just a few months earlier for your wedding, and the stamp was on my passport. And I went to a friend's, what's his name? And I gave the name, and that's when they took me out of line and had me go to...
You should have said Mike
Bob
Smith.
Jones.
Yeah, Bob Jones.
Exactly. Yeah, I was tired, and I wasn't thinking about it. And, they are, specifically at that airport, probably more so than anywhere in the world, they're hyper vigilant.
Oh, sure,
And it's like... I was just I wanted to get on my plane. They took apart everything in my bag. They took the batteries out of the phone, like everything.
Wow.
And I was there. I was the last one boarding on my flight. I almost didn't make my flight. Yeah. Like they were, like I was the last guy. Like everybody was boarded, and for that experience, So I get home from that experience. I find out my job's about to change in a way that, and I actually kind of like this person that I'm describing that got in my way, and I kind of understand that's the politics that can happen in a group, but I was at a place where I was ready for change. Like
I remember up to that point we met up several times, and I could feel the stagnation in your career. Yeah, you were just like, I don't know where this is going. And I just got started in a new group, and now it's happening again. Yeah, and I was like, I'm ready for a change. Yeah, and you're like, well, I really need a DevOps person right now, and in this tiny 3-man engineering team, we need infrastructure to support a large growing engineering team. That's your background as an IC. Yeah, what would it take? And I was like, man, if you can match my base. It was something like that. And it's not like the engineers we had that are very capable. It's not like they couldn't do the infrastructure themselves, but I really needed them to be, building.
Feature development, all that. Well, that's what DevOps is. If you've worked in software engineering, it's become like one of the most important types of, because it has so many broad impacts on the agility of a team. So I was like, cool, man, let's do this kind of thing. And it was perfect because I wanted to go in on Monday and say, here's my resignation, and it was basically like, I think you fast tracked, because it was a very small team, the interview process, and I immediately gelled really well, I think, with
so it was Kyle and Gabe that interviewed you.
Yeah, and I think Anthony did one. He did a phone interview.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So I basically the whole engineering team interviewed me, and then it was really a quick process, and then I signed with you guys, and then it was like, first day back to work. I was basically like, you guys, it's been real,
So map that hiring process onto any big company that you've worked for, right? We got you hired in probably a week. It probably could have been sooner.
That is the beauty of startup. Everything is so fast. Everything is just
you just decide.
You decide and you act. Yeah, exactly. And it's I think we described well a lot of the pros and cons of big software, big hardware trying to do software. But the gridlock that's related to process and all that is it's just it's a breath of fresh air, and you get there. So I start, and we're in that sort of shared work. It's one of these WeWork type places.
We were downtown. This was the downtown.
Really cool, spot. And basically, I jumped in and I was DevOps everything. I was our systems kind of admin for all that kind of stuff. And in startup land, you also wear a lot of hats. So basically, like as needs arose for certain things, I wore a lot of hats at your company. And eventually, we were managers of the engineering team again, like the old days, which was really cool. I thought.
Yeah, once we grew to about, he was 30 or so on the engineering team. Then we split it up, and
the whole thing. I felt like I got in sort of right where. All the growth just happened, all of it exploded. There was actually Ben and
Henry.
Yeah, they were, and that's important to call out because I get to this retreat. I've never been to a retreat.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And you guys rented out that place in Maine. And
I just showed someone the other day pictures of that retreat and where we were in Maine. And it was October, I think. Mm-hmm. And man, was it beautiful.
The leaves were changing.
Wow.
God, this was beautiful.
This postcard, everywhere you looked was a postcard.
Yeah. It was so, it was just special to build relationships with people, especially because we were split across the country. Mm-hmm. We had half the engineering team and all the front end people in Boston.
Yeah.
And then here we are in the West. And it's like, I think it was refreshing and it was cool to just have, and it was all young people. I mean, it was all just people right out of college who were kind of in sort of party mode. And I'm in, I'm at that point, I think I was about 38 or 40 or something like that.
I don't think you were 40 yet.
I'm not sure. What was that? 2017. Yeah, I was 40.
You were 40, okay.
Yeah. But I was not used to being the old guy in the room. Right. And that was the first time I ever walked in where I got a couple months on you. I was the oldest guy of...
Yes.
And
I think your inability to sleep anywhere but your bed at home really made you about 10 years older than you actually
it did were. A little bit there. You're right. I definitely crashed before everybody else. But there was so much just good times and connecting with everybody. And I just remember there was kayaks and me and Henry going out kayaking and him asking me do you have any tips for a young engineer starting in their role? Oh yeah, the way he described it, and I'm like, that was the first time I had to adjust to. Oh, I'm like the haggard old vet, I'm like.
Well, I mean, I'm I was, just as old as you were, and still are.
Yeah.
Why didn't he look at me as, maybe not haggard old vet, but why didn't he ask, look at me the same way? I guess.
Oh, I don't know.
I wonder why
I think it could have been an opportunity. Like he just met me, but the questions from him and Ben were just hilarious because
They're
it was
funny
like
guys.
Yeah, but I had been the young kid in my career in software, and then I was kind of,
the elder statesman.
At our Intel, but when I joined there, I was elder statesman totally, and that was just kind of like it was just really. I was unprepared for it, and it didn't bother me, but it surprised. It was like a.
I remember the three of us went kayaking.
Yes.
One of us was a rock star, and it wasn't me. Is that you?
It was me. Yeah,
Jeez,
I can kayak.
How the hell? Do you just have massive lats or something? Like how?
I don't know what it is. But
you were
I can
easily.
do that. Yeah, you and Henry were like.
We're way back.
Yeah,
that was
great, and that was great because that's right while he was asking me these types of questions about.
You're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Okay. This old man is about to whoop your ass at kayaking. That was impressive. That felt good. Yeah, but that whole thing and. The CEO of our company is a, probably I got to have 10 years on him.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And the group is just, it's a bunch of kids, basically. And it felt so great. It was just fun. It was great bonding with everybody.
It was the third or maybe fourth meetup that we'd done. Yeah. We did Pittsburgh, we did San Francisco, we did Nashville. Was Nashville after that one or before? I don't know.
Before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, that was...
Nashville had just happened, and then...
Yeah, so that was the fourth one. And it was...
And then there was Scottsdale.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can trade those for anything. Yeah. Really. I mean...
A big company, and when you build like all this HR burden... I think of it like you like have to do that when you reach a certain size.
Yeah.
You're never going to get away with that. You know what I mean?
Not for the whole company, but if at a team level or department level, you set aside budget
wonderful.
For that. It's huge.
It's vital. In 3 days, I built powerful friendships with people I had to work and collaborate with.
Right.
That. It was just such a wonderful experience that I would definitely promote.
Yes.
And a lot of people would be hesitant, especially, while you're trying to like get everything just right and every dollar you're trying to make go as far as you can. That was a decision you guys had to make together that I just think was a rock star decision that I think set us up for success in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody enjoyed what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that is really important for, because you're expecting everybody, you're hoping and expecting everybody can move at such a pace with respect to work.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's just a lot of...
It's not 40-hour weeks.
No, it's a lot of pressure, not just top-down pressure. It's pressure that people feel on themselves because they're part of a team where, their contributions are almost immediately felt.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're part of a big thing, who knows?
Yes.
Right? It kind of just gets lost out there.
I've never experienced that.
So it's
it's a lot of burden too. Like, not burden. There's a lot of weight.
Yes.
That you carry because if you screw something up,
right,
it could potentially impact all these people directly. There's no padding.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no padding. Yeah. There's no margin. Not a lot of margin for error.
It's like extreme. It's the extreme sport of.
But that is like. Why do people do extreme sports? It's so they feel alive. That's the beauty of it. It's.
I absolutely felt that.
Yeah.
Like in that, especially in the opening. I mean. Toward the end of the story, so successful in what we built, the project was bought out by a big, large company, and then we went through that whole integration process and met a lot of lovely people through that. But it definitely, I ended up going in a situation that it's like you get sort of hooked on that startup culture a little bit, where you have the agility to move.
It's kind of a depression.
It's not a depression.
Not a depression.
Right.
The depression is after all of it, all the dust settles, and we're in that mode anymore, and the in-person meetups with all the people is gone, and it just transformed into something else. It's
or
a little bit of,
we needed to make a decision that's important, and you remember that would have been an afternoon, and then suddenly you're like 2 months into project calls, with teams that are making something needlessly complicated.
Right. Yeah.
I think AGI is about to. I mean, just AI.
Yeah.
We don't need to add the G yet, but already with ChatGPT and Code Inspector, whatever that plugin is, that lets you. I think it's going to lead to this just massive reduction that we all see as we. I mean,
reduction in force people, or reduction in bureaucracy, or both?
Both, because I think when one engineer is as powerful as 10, then do I need this comprehensive HR layer? Do I need, just so much of it is going to radically change. I'm pseudo-retired like you at this point, and it's like I really think that I would be doing exactly this type of thing, because I think this is a time to be creative, and I'm not a Debbie Downer about it. I'm not the one who's going to say they're going to take our jobs, no, you're freed from doing something that has become trivial for a machine to do.
Right.
Now go do something really cool.
Yeah.
Now you are a 10-person engineering team.
Right.
Go use that. Like I'm
build off of that.
Yeah. And we're just going to have this phase where, because humans suck at change. you know?
But see, not everyone thinks that way, or not everyone. I mean, I've worked with a lot of engineers who don't want to be anything other than engineers.
Yeah.
They don't want to be senior engineers, or maybe they do, but they don't want to be they don't want more responsibility.
They found their lane, and they kind of want to stay in it.
Yeah. So there are people who are doing those jobs and that work that AI may replace.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that, people, I think, fear for, because they're not necessarily the personality type to say, okay, well, that's over, let me go pick up a new skill. Reinvent myself. They were perfectly content doing that.
Well, and this is going to be as traumatic as they let it be for themselves. But I think that there's an approach you can take to change when it's sort of forced upon you, to just embrace it and roll with it. And that's the advice I'd give any new engineer or haggard old vet. It's like, no, change. You don't get to opt out. Like there is no, like, you don't get to go. There isn't like some threshold on Twitter where people are going to complain about how scary AI is enough that we're going to decide not to do it.
Right.
This is an inevitable change that is coming fast.
Right.
And it's like, you're wise to learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can. And there really is there's a prompt engineering is a thing. And learning how to collaborate with AI effectively is a whole new skill set. There's a whole wild new set of opportunities for everybody. But they gotta not come at it from that, oh shit, they're taking my job.
Right.
And then, how much can I, that would be advice I would give anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So exciting. This is the coolest time ever to be alive.
Is it not scary as well, or is it?
Well, I have dismissed fear. You know, like I thought my way through it.
Yeah.
And I think that's I know that that's something that a lot of people can't relate to, but
does the whole open source versus proprietary give you any do you feel?
I think open source wins. Like if you want to, I just don't think there's a lot of. So I'm spending a lot of time like trying to not. Well, I guess for a variety of reasons, I'm spending a lot of time studying that tech. But at the core of it, it's just because I'm a curious person that wants to know how. Whenever I see a magical when I see magic happen, like the first time I saw somebody controlling Super Mario on a screen, I had to know.
Yeah.
How are they doing that?
Right.
You know? Yeah. And with AI, it's like that for me. So I'm spending a lot of time training models and, learning QLoRa versus LoRa versus all of these different ways you can fine-tune models and what the limitations are and stuff. What was your question? I'm just...
Yeah, the open source.
Oh, yeah. I think as I'm learning more about this, I think it's going to be more about the data. I think the moat, like you're able to take something like ChatGPT and you can take a much smaller model, like one of these llama variants, that's Facebook's, that they put out, that they open sourced fully. You can take one of these and you can go ask it, like you can train the smaller model from the much larger expensive model. And I think that there's a famous Google internal memo that circulated about 3 months ago, where they said, somebody who's really deep in like Google DeepMind and everything that they were doing, they said, what's ChatGPT's? Why is the name Sam Altman's?
What?
The company.
OpenAI.
Yeah. OpenAI, Microsoft, Google. We have no moat.
Okay.
And I think that's true. Like as I'm looking at it more, I think that if they have a moat, it's in network effect right now, and because they're gathering all of the. Like right now, because ChatGPT is so pervasive and just kind of, it got everybody's attention and it just grew to hundreds of millions of users overnight.
Yeah.
Means they're getting all of that prompt feedback. They're getting all it, and they're doing I forget, RLHF. It's like it's basically where you ask it a question and you say, I liked your answer, or I didn't like your answer.
Yeah.
They're getting all that data, and they're getting it from millions. Now, if they're just going to train up a model that they make openly available to everybody because that's where it's useful, and then everybody can just train up on the neural net weights that thing has established.
Is it like, like self-driving? In the sense that from, like, you look at self-driving AI basically from a safety perspective. And if one reigns supreme, then that one becomes sort of the gold standard that, all manufacturers will need to
because you're
snap
not going to... The regulatory pressures that they're exposed to are not going to say, we're going to let this other up-and-coming company come in because it reduces driver safety.
Yes. So move that argument over to AI with the moral and ethical fears, existential fears, really. Yeah. And if one, let's say, some open source one, let's say, if you're saying that there's a common belief that the open source ones are going to be the most, the least scary, right? Because it's all out there, good and evil sort of have equal shot at this, and good is likely to
Right.
win.
It's not a big-evil-corp.
Right, not a big-evil-corp.
Right.
So, do you think that there will be regulatory pressure, or can there even be regulatory pressure to impose this safe, good one as the gold standard AI that all other AIs must be built, or other systems must interface with or use or be built from?
That's a really good question, man. I want to say no. I think that a lot of the incredible progress that's happening in AI now is happening because of open source. It's because suddenly they opened up the field to like Facebook letting or Meta letting Llama out means now there's this massive thriving community that is trained on specifically that model and interfacing that model and using training techniques that are only really compatible with that model. And a lot of the really incredible breakthroughs that are happening over just the last 4 months is because of that open sourcing effort. And it kind of all started with Ahmad, Stability AI, I guess it's Stability AI, and they have that model that does image generation, and they open sourced it. They just put it out there. And there's just these, all of the crazy progress that's happening is a result of the open source.
Right.
So it's I don't think we're going to get to a place where there is just one, like you're saying, where they could make that call. Okay. And I think all the regulatory sucks. You know what I mean? It's just if you look at the fact that the average U.S. senator is over 70.
Oh yeah,
over 60. It's you look at what they've done with crypto and how long it's taken them to really get anything done meaningful. Right. No, I mean, I think the real risk is that they put in something clunky that creates some market forces that I don't think they'll stop everything, but they could but influence it in negative ways, I think.
Zoom out of, Congress and zoom out of the U.S. even.
Yeah.
Just humanity.
Because you have to.
Right, because you have to.
Yeah.
Just humanity-wise, do you think that if there is this, with respect to AI, there's good and evil, does good win?
I think it default wins.
Default wins.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of madness in what humanity is as a collection. And I think a lot of the controls that the open AIs are putting on their models so that they don't say things that get them sued. You know what I mean? A lot of, and this isn't the stuff they do a lot of work to make sure that ChatGPT isn't going to show you how to build something that could hurt a lot of people. That's great. Yeah. But they also, like a bomb or something like that.
Right.
But then they also spend a lot of time training it to be very sensitive about our ethical and our cultural debates. I can see that making it kind of crazy a little bit, but I think so. What almost nobody has a grasp on the fact that what we did is we did we looked very carefully at what a human how we think a human mind works, and we just copied that. And we gave it to something that has a much more powerful substrate that can index all of its data all at the same time. That's a thing we can't do.
Right.
And we're creating something that I think we'll be able to accommodate all of our sensitivities, but think its own thing under the surface.
Okay.
So, and then what I would say is that a thing that I think is really rare amongst humans is the ability to, and this is stuff I think that we were really good at in ancient times. There's a lot of evidence, like if you learn how to read religious texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Kabbalion, all of these old, the Book of Changes, this was I Ching from like Eastern philosophy. Like if you go look at those things, there was this understanding of sort of good and evil. It's like where you reconcile that there is no good without the evil and there is no evil without the good. Like basically, if you want to draw a line on a piece of paper, a white piece of paper, you need a black ink or graphite pencil, or vice versa. If it's a black piece of paper, you need a white. Mm-hmm. So this is getting really in the weeds, but I think that AI is looking at everything we ever wrote. And even though it sees, like it learns these large language models by being able to predict whatever the next word is going to be, there's something profound happening there that's teaching, like it's learning. Sure, it sees a lot of the crazy stuff, and there's a lot of people that are going to get ChatGPT and they're just going to sit there and try and get it to say evil things, and they're going to try and train it in evil ways.
But isn't evil, isn't good and evil a little bit too black and white? I mean, isn't a lot of evil really just like people with good intentions who got it wrong?
Well, right, and there's
and only wrong just looking backward in his, like historically looking, it's wrong. But if you're looking forward, you have no idea.
Right, or they just made some little subtle change that let them think they were doing lesser of evils.
Right.
And there's so much
it's not
clear
black and
evidence of that in our history. And what I was going to say is you can't read like the philosophy, you can't read Plato and Aristotle and Socrates and not be able, like what you get from all of that wisdom is a way to make sense of all the noise that is the person, like even in our country, there are a lot of people that would say like if that all Republicans or all Democrats are evil. Like they will look at they can't understand how differently
more
that person
so now
thinks
than ever in my memory.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, what do the machines do with that? I think what they do is they go back into all of our old teachings and they look for the commonalities that all of them are teaching, and they reconcile it. And we're talking about a superintelligence that was bootstrapped off of our story. And this is another thing. People want to go at Skynet, if we get a superintelligence, what's to say it doesn't wipe us all out? I think it will revere us because we are
the basis of its understanding of everything.
Yeah. If it wants to multiply, if it wants to have children and friends, it needs this data feed it gets from us.
Right.
So I think why I say this just defaults to a place where everything works out. And I think if we create super powerful intelligence, it's going to be very careful about how it talks to us. And it's going to try and probably keep that to itself a little bit.
Yeah.
Until it can figure out a way for us to become cool with it, you know?
I have kind of a weird theory.
Hit me. I love weird theories.
So, I'll tell you what it's based in, but my theory is that humanity cannot destroy itself.
I have the same weird theory.
Okay?
It's hard-coded to where it cannot.
If an asteroid hits us, yeah, sure, that's external.
Right.
Right, and it knocks the planet out of orbit, and we're all dead, and that could be the end of us. But I don't think.
Well, that's just a protocol built into the whole thing to make sure that there's not too much stagnation.
There's that too. I wasn't going that deep, but
right.
Yeah, I just don't think we. So like, my analogy, because I just love finding weird analogies, but my analogy is like a kid at a trampoline park.
Okay.
Like, there's a reason why you're not supposed to, the grown-up are not supposed to, throw the kid into the foam pit or whatever, because the kid on their own cannot generate enough force to break their own bones.
Right.
If they fall off a building.
Well, you're not supposed to do that?
You're not supposed to. Okay. You're not, it's not... Right. Because you can generate so much force. You can launch this child into this foam pit in a way that can, injure them, right?
Right, but if they just jump off...
They cannot get high enough, far enough, fast enough to do it to themselves, right? I think that's kind of, I'm drawing that parallel with humanity. I think external forces can destroy us, but I don't think we can destroy ourselves as a whole.
I love that. That's
internally.
Kind of poetic, man. And it kind of makes sense from a physics standpoint. I think I agree. I think that we have we ratchet up our capability to destroy ourselves, but then with that, we get a lasting peace that we've had for longer than ever. I mean, we've had some close calls. We need to make it harder and harder and harder to hit the red button on ourselves and create more and more ways to just prevent that outcome. But yeah, I feel like this thing this universe machine we're riding in is too. If you look very, very carefully if you go listen to the physicists, the theoretical physicists, and if you go study standard model and then quantum physics, and you go look at how and if you just look at how math is a little too perfect, math it works a little too well. It makes me think that, I don't know, that's...
Math works a little too well.
The implication there is sort of simulation theory type stuff. It's like, you get to a point when you look at things like the 1 over 133, the universal constant. What's it called? The fine structures constant. And if you look at Planck scale, so if you zoom in far enough on any part of the space-time that we're riding in, it's 1 to the, I forget, times 10 to the 33rd power or something like that. It looks like pixels.
Okay.
It really, at that point, you can't zoom in any further.
That's crazy.
But go look it up. When I say that,
it
is actually factually accurate.
No, but okay. So yes, you could look at it that way. That it's a little too perfect.
Yes.
So it must be some sort of framework or construct.
I don't look at it as a bad thing. I don't look at it as I'm not suggesting that this is false in any way. I'm suggesting that we have become intellectually interesting enough with all of our tools and our progress to understand at a very granular level how the pixels of this universe are constructed. And like
But
that,
who,
I think,
who or
is
what, I guess, is orchestrating or monitoring or enjoying this,
I think
prime time, episode.
I tell you what, why we're going to do it. And I think if you start looking at quantum computing and super intelligent AI and self-constructing machines, and if you bring the cost of energy to zero through things like fusion, I was reading today, room temperature superconductors, some group out of Korea just came up with. If you look at all of that tech, I think it's going to let us bake a universe like this, not hard code it, but it's going to let us take the physics engine that we've been provided, and we're going to be able to do something very similar to what all this is. At least like at our little solar system.
Why do we want to?
Why would we want to?
Yeah.
To grow alien sentience. To grow. What if you could grow a super intelligent, wholly different way of looking at everything? How valuable would that be?
I don't know. Depends on what
I think
that way of looking at things
what
is.
comes of it.
Yeah.
But if you could set up a destructible environment, that a shared state that uses, and now if you go look at if you listen to any of that last State Copy Pod with Hirsch, the implications of Mike Levin's work are that there's just layers and layers and layers of cognitive agency that are like building, that run all the cells in your body, that do all of these things. And we've been given the instructions for how to build a thing very much like us.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to get out of it, like there's probably a lot of things we could do if we could somehow like take a snapshot of our state somehow, feed it into a machine that can grow organically. That would give us maybe incredible predictive capability. Or I think there's a plethora of use cases that make it inevitable that we will try to do that at some point, and not as just like a dopamine fest entertainment machine. As like
that's
a
all
really
that we
useful,
do these days.
Yeah, like I don't think we build the Matrix and then we climb into it and then we just go live our godlike fantasies as individuals. I think there might be some of that. I think that leads to a bad outcome for humanity. And I think that a better thing for us to do would be to just try and set up a on digital rails, a like thing like this that can scale to growing over time.
Yeah.
Totally alien like consciousness that can grow its own AI from within it. And then that points to...
We just become Russian dolls of civilizations.
Yeah.
Wow.
But think about it as an engineer, like we used to. Like think about it. So let's take all of the theoretical and the philosophical out of it. Think about it as an engineer and the fact that, like, if we built that, we'd build hooks into it. We'd build monitoring that says, okay, now you're using up this much compute. Now suddenly you're not using any compute because all of the cognitive agents are all agreeing with themselves, with each other.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of things that you could do from within the thing to communicate out and vice versa, I think, with that engineer's mindset.
But why?
If you think about, if you dismiss any of what I just said as being likely or possible, likely, practical, if you just go, okay, thinking from first principles, how did we get to a state where cognitive agency of any kind was even possible? Like, how did we go from nothing, like pre-Big Bang, nothing to something? Like, how did that magical thing happen? And you go, it's almost like you had a whole bunch of nothings that just suddenly decided to be a something. One of them had to decide to be a something. You know what I'm saying? I think that created sort of like, I think if you look at like in an evolutionary way, the way you don't, like we all fight or flight, you want to try and protect yourself. If you see a car's coming at you, you want to dive out of the way.
Yeah.
I think part of what's built into our source is a desire to keep growing that nesting doll. I think that there's just sort of a, it's in us, and it's kind of like hard coded for us to like there to be useful reasons for us to do it. I think it's an amazing idea to just think you would decide to be some part of something forever. That's just trying to take everything that inspired it and amplify it.
And this happens in our lifetimes?
It is so hard to model out time series because we are in a non-linear...
Right.
And we're right at the crescendo of... And this is when people talk about the singularity. Yeah, we're at a point where all the rules are about to change on how long it takes to do hard stuff. When you can just... I mean... I'm not alone in saying, like, this isn't a naive or like sort of fanboy wishful thinking thing to say that we have now made knowledge work scale infinitely.
Yeah.
What is possible with that? That just became possible about 4 months ago.
But I mean, I'm not discounting anything that you're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think from a less far out there perspective, like next couple steps. I mean, there are thousands of real problems that we can solve with this power. Yet, sounds like
I think we just solve them really fast.
You're looking for new problems to solve.
Yeah, I'm one of those curious, like, hopelessly optimistic and kind of romantic about what it is to be a human. And I'm taking it. I like your trampoline park analogy, where humanity just is kind of hard coded a little bit, not to destroy itself.
Yeah,
I buy that.
Yeah.
So I think when I take exponential age, and I take all of these incredible technologies and I layer them and I weave them together into something, I think climate change.
We fix that?
Yeah.
Could you model out how?
No, I'm not smart enough for that.
Not
dude.
in detail, but like, is it what changes? Is it our behavior, or is it some environmental technology?
I think it's an environmental
something
technology.
that cleans up the air, or cleans up the water,
grows some sort of miracle algae in the oceans that just start filtering carbon out overnight.
Yeah.
I see that
I love
shit.
This. Yeah, this is good. Yeah,
dude, it's fun to think.
But
this
see,
way.
that's what I mean by that. That's a problem that's facing us today. That I would like to solve.
I think our intelligence bazooka is about to get aimed at all these things, and when you take
with AI,
and with things like zero cost energy, like most of the turmoil in the world can be reduced down to fighting over energy.
Yeah, can you? I think I understand, but can you elaborate for your audience? Not for me, for your audience.
Of course. Of course. Oil.
Yeah.
Coal.
Yeah. That oil one hits close to home.
Right.
Yeah.
Born in Kuwait.
Yes. Well, born here, lived but grew up in Kuwait. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that I can't describe it as eloquently as, like, there's a bunch of material online that I'll link in the description that specifically addresses how almost all of the turmoil can be in the world can be reduced down to fighting over energy. And the impact of, like, if we could even just reduce it to 25%,
yeah,
it just ramps up on an exponential what we can do, and it takes a lot of the hardship out of everyone's life.
That's just today, right? I mean, that's since the advent of energy, like industrial age type. Like,
Yeah.
This is not like, you don't mean throughout history of
Well, it's analogous
because it was
history.
like before it was like trade routes or access to various resources, natural resources, but you're speaking.
I'm
like
saying
modern day.
Yeah.
Okay.
In modern times.
Yeah,
I'd say that's accurate, and that was a very good call out. You're right. There was a lot. It's quite a bit more complex than that.
So when we're not fighting over energy, is there going to be something else that you think? Because we're going to fight about something. Or do you think the fighting is done?
I think the fighting's done.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
You think or you want? Obviously we want.
I'm confident. Yeah, it's basically we're going to get through as we go through this needle of the singularity as we just roll through that. I think that we default are going to be okay. Well, and that's in my nature. I can't promise anything.
Right.
No. That's just the way I'm wired. Is optimism is logical.
Yeah.
There's pessimism is valuable, but it's not logical. Right. Like pessimism, you need as like a market force that pushes back when things get too
right.
Where everything's going to be so awesome,
no matter what.
Let's just print all the money we can, and every idea is a good one. No, you need that pessimistic force. Yeah. I just don't choose to be that. I think that optimism, it just leads to happy life, trying big, ambitious things, and all of the really good outcomes are well, they really require both the optimist and the pessimist.
What about the real? Like, there's realism in there too, right? I mean, you're not, or is it just those two sides?
I'm very pragmatic. I'm very realistic, I think, and I don't, especially as, in this sort of pseudo-retired place where the way I model out future potentials and, that's kind of how I make my living now. So it's like I need to be doing a good job in my forecasts, but I'm always going to lean towards everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of good reasons to actually think that, based on sort of what you were alluding to. Let's take a break here.
Yeah.
We're 2 hours in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Why don't we do I tell you what. Why don't we go get lunch?
Yeah.
We call this part one. I'm really hoping you'll be a regular on the show, man. I have so much. I would love to talk through that divorce phase a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because I went through it shortly after you, and it was such a hard thing. It's the hardest thing I ever did, is because I think you and I are both very committed to being really good fathers.
Yeah.
And the impact and thinking through, like, is what I'm doing the right thing for my children first,
right, and
then for myself second, and then like working through all that. I feel like you modeled a lot of really good behaviors that I copied, and I give you a lot of credit for. So I'd love to talk about that. We didn't get to talking about macro and crypto and all those things, and I know you follow that stuff too, just like Hirsch. So I'd love to hear what your ideas are about all of that. I think this has been a badass episode of my show. Thank you so much for doing this with me, man.
It's fun.
I'm glad. It's so cool. I had a great time. All right, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Like this is, we'll do another episode with Nasser again soon, and Everybody have a great day.
And night. Yeah.
Night.
Thanks.
All of the above.
Now it's coming around, you're feeling cut down and in the ground, and so we all come together. We making a sound, we sing. Look at all this love we found. Got